We are glad that President Macron wins because the economic agenda of Marine Le Pen was a danger for France. Public spending, it's a big issue in France. Marine Le Pen program was not financed. Macron agenda is more pro-business, so for the economy as a whole, it's good. It will be more growth, more jobs creation. Of course, there are many things to carry on, and we hope that now this second term will focus on this still gap that needs to be addressed. First of all, the energy crisis. You know that now it touches all Europe, but France especially. We have to reinvest in nuclear power plant. We have to invest in some renewable offshore wind, for instance, raw material security. We have big problems to ensure that we have these lines of supplies. And this is also a European issue because lots of our companies have compliance issue when they go and work in emerging economies. I think it's worse for French, but also English, German companies. This needs to be addressed. Labor market needs to be much more flexible and dynamic. The jobs creation has been very strong in France. You know, the unemployment rate go down to 7%, but it's still more than Germany, US or UK. So we need to fix this. We have 1 million of jobs that are not taken, that are open positions. And it cannot continue because, you know, we have a big deficit, lots of social spending in France. And I come to the last point, which is the pension reforms. Big one, it shall save 17 billion euro per year. You know that pension costs to France more than 300 billion per year. It's the first public spending in the country, and we need to fix this very quickly.
Well, we expect a reshuffle at some point now, and rumor has it there will be a very left-leaning government, potentially, including the Prime Minister, because his government at the moment is more centre-right government, including the Economy and Finance Minister, Bruno Le Maire, who's an ex-Les Républicains. What impact does that have, potentially, on the reform agenda for Emmanuel Macron, if there's more left-leaning government, because he wants to win some of those left-wing voters, especially before the legislative election?
We are not political analysts, we are entrepreneurs. And the first step that has been done in the last 5 years are the right one to support the offer, to support corporations. And we have seen France going better, having some industries coming back in the country, more industrial jobs creation. And if we stop this way, it will be catastrophic because it was 30 years of collapse in our country. So we just start to breathe a little bit. You know, we had lots of tax cuts. It goes the right way, but we are still one of the highest taxed country in OECD. So there is a lot to go, and it will be a big mistake, a big failure, and I don't think that our citizens want more left. We haven't seen this. Of course, Mélenchon is high, but the country is right, is on the right side. And we need to wait this next election for parliaments, and we will see what majority comes up. 2 months is an eternity. We'll see what comes next.
I take your point about France being open to business, and we've seen under past presidents that there was a real flip-flop in strategy, and business just did not know where it stood. But under Macron, there's been this element of stability and very friendly policies. But now if we think about the cost of living crisis, the government has borne the brunt of that to date, but there's a feeling as though employers should also pay for some of this increased cost from employees. And we saw Le Pen promising that wages would go up, some sort of fairy godmother wand she was hoping to wave, that employers would simply come up with higher wages. But even Macron has been talking about untaxed bonuses for workers. What's the pressure now on employers to do more to take the pressure off those workers?
The wages is a very serious topic, and you know, every year inside the corporation there are negotiations, and in average the wages in France in the last 3-4 years increased in average 2.5% more rapidly than inflation. So the real power for salaries was higher than inflation. The problem is that we have a cost of housing that has exploded, and the job creation is in the big cities where the housing is very expensive. So we need to have a shock, we need to have construction, and this is a big problem in France, that nobody provide permits to construct. So the construction sector needs to be boosted. We need to have much more housing, real estate sectors. And this is the biggest help for families, for households to have this budget going down. And we have also the energy that is a non-arbitration spending. You have to pay for this. And this price going up, we need to reform the energy market at the European level. You know that the price of electricity is indexed to gas, and obviously gas is very high. We support the reform of this market. It makes no sense to have it linked to gas today. So I think there are very effective steps to be taken along with the wage increase, because if you increase too much the wage, you also feed the inflation and you have a circle that never ends and you lose the gain.
Let me ask you a little bit more about pension reform, because I did catch up with the Transport Minister last night, and you could see it had been an emotional journey. We know the strikes that took place that really crippled parts of the country back in 2019 and 2020 when they're bringing about some pension reform. As we talk about more changes and lifting the pension age, should we get set for more strikes across the country, more protests? The Gilets jaunes were apparent in some parts of the country leading up to the vote.
I think the president has been elected also by being very clear about the pension, that he will reform. Maybe he will not reform as much as he wanted to, but we need to do something. In the last 5 years, you know, this reform has not going through. And this is the most important one. And in a more general term, the public spending, because in France we spend nearly 60%, I think, of GDP. It's enormous. And everybody complains about the public services. So where the money goes, is it efficient? We don't think so. We need to modernize the public services. It's really a question for us to see so many money going through and nobody being really happy about it. So there is something to be done.